What you are about to hear was never meant for the world. It is not fiction, and it is not entertainment. It is a record, a confession, of what one man discovered beneath the ruins of a forgotten hospital, a place sealed away from memory, hidden under years of dust, rot, and silence. And more importantly, it is the price he paid for opening a door no one should ever find. I need you to understand something before we begin. This story will not ask for your belief. Whether you call it superstition, delusion, or truth is irrelevant. What matters is that you listen, not with half an ear, not while scrolling, not while distracted, because the things buried in these words are patient. They wait in the shadows between your thoughts and in the cracks of your attention. The moment you allow your guard to drop, they seep through. And once they are in you, cannot simply turn them off. So I am not asking you to believe me. I am only asking that you listen to every word until the end. But when the last word fades and the silence finally returns, I will ask one thing of you. Just one. When you are lying in bed tonight, when the weight of this story lingers in your chest like smoke after a fire, do not look in the mirror. Not in the hallway. Not in the bathroom. And not in the black reflection of your phone screen. Because what stares back may not be yours anymore. They say mirrors are harmless, that they only show what stands before them. But what if they do more than that? What if they remember? What if the glass holds not just light and reflection, but fragments echo of everything that's ever looked into it? 1,000 faces, 1,000 lives, stored and waiting. And sometimes, when the right story unlocks the right corner of your mind, the reflection changes. That's why I made this channel. Screams of the Mind is not just a collection of horror. It is a doorway, a place where the voices of those shadows are given form. A place for the restless, the haunted, the curious, and the broken. Every day I bring you bone-chilling tales, psychological terrors, creeping truths that have clawed their way out of silence, disturbing memories that were never supposed to be spoken aloud, urban legends, paranormal encounters, nightmares that escaped the dream and walked into waking life. This channel is not safe, but it is necessary, because once you've listened to what's coming, you will need somewhere to return to, somewhere to remind yourself that you are not alone. When the reflection shifts, when the scratching starts behind your walls, when the shadows at the edge of your room hold just a little too still. So I welcome you. Welcome to the darkest corner of the mind. Welcome to the echoes you were never meant to hear. Welcome to Screams of the Mind. Subscribe now. You'll need a place to come back to when the reflection changes. It began with a purchase, $13,000. That was all it took to buy a piece of land no one wanted. A derelict property in the Catskills, listed in the county records as an abandoned state facility. No paper trail, no history, no explanation for why a 3-story building could simply exist without being documented. The buyer was a man named Louis Nathaniel Harlan, age 37, occupation sound technician. He was known in his field for restoring historic audio, old vinyl, decayed wax cylinders, damaged reel-to-reel tapes that the FBI or private collectors wanted to hear again. He was not famous, he was not rich, he was not even especially eccentric. But he had an obsession. It was not ghosts, it was not the occult. He was obsessed with silence. He once said in an interview, "People think silence means nothing. But silence is not empty. Silence is pressure. It is just noise that has not reached us yet. You can feel it in your chest, in your teeth, in the way your ears strain for something you cannot quite catch. If you listen long enough, silence starts talking back." Most people dismissed him as a technician who spent too many nights alone with static. But silence was the reason he drove upstate, into the mountains, and signed the deed for a rotting state property. The place was called Ridgeway. Not on satellite maps, not on public records. The locals claimed it was a psychiatric hospital, though no one could remember it operating. No nurses, no patients, no admissions, just a gray husk of a building, half swallowed by ivy, and dirt sagging, like it was sinking into the earth. What struck Louis was not the building itself. It was the air around it. No birdsong, no wind in the trees, no buzzing of flies or hum of distant traffic, just pressure, a heaviness pressing against the eardrums, like the moment before a thunderclap. Silence. Louis brought recording equipment, as he always did. He was not there to hunt ghosts. He was not there for urban legends. He was there to listen. And Ridgeway had something to say. The building was worse inside than it looked outside. Paint peeled in strips dangling from the walls like dead skin. The air stank of mold and rust. The copper bite of long dried blood. The hallways tilted in unnatural ways. Doors opening into collapsed staircases. Rooms packed with toppled bed frames and shattered glass. On the ground floor, Louis found the remains of a reception desk. The drawers were empty. The filing cabinets gutted. Someone had been here before, but the silence lingered. It wasn't just an absence of sound. It was an active thing. It seemed to throb, to vibrate. His recordings captured it as a low, nearly inaudible frequency. A hum that made his teeth ache. He followed it deeper through the basement, past the boiler room, down into a sub-basement no blueprint should have allowed. The silence was loudest there. That's where he found the cabinet. Old, metal, rusted shut. A lock still hanging from the handle, brittle with age. He forced it open with a screwdriver. Inside was a single object, a reel-to-reel tape. No label, no date, no case. Louis carried it back to his equipment. His hands shook as he threaded the tape through the machine, pressing the headset tight against his ears. Static, nothing but static, until the static broke, and a voice whispered, "Louis Nathaniel Harlan, you've come back." He tore the headphones off. His chest heaved. Impossible. He checked the reel. Splicing, overdubbing, a magnetic imprint, nothing. The tape was clean. The voice was on it. But there was no evidence it had been added. He pressed play again. The static rose. Then came the creaking. The sound of a door, slowly opening. Louis swore he felt the air shift in the room. His own breath grew heavy, drawn out in the same rhythm as the tape. The silence pressed harder, like the sound was bending the air around him. The door on the tape groaned wider. Then, nothing. Just that silence again. He leaned forward, headset clamped tighter. He wanted to hear. He needed to hear. He whispered to himself, "Silence isn't empty. Silence is waiting." And then nothing. The next thing Louis remembered was waking up, outside, face down in the leaves, 200 feet from the building. His van was untouched. His equipment still inside. 48 hours had passed. 2 entire days lost. He had no memory of leaving the sub-basement. No memory of walking out. No memory of sleep, or dreams, or time passing at all. When his neighbor asked later where he had been, Louis stared at him for a long time before answering. And all he said was this: "The room's beneath the pool, but it's older than the building." The silence hadn't let him go. It had followed him home. And soon the tapes of Ridgeway would begin. Chapter 2. The sound that follows less. Louis moved into Ridgeway, not just to study it, not just to pass through. He moved in. He brought in crates of recording gear, spools of cable, and racks of reel-to-reel machines. He converted the old administrator's office into a makeshift studio. The dust was thick. The ceiling sagged. The smell of mildew clung to everything. But Louis didn't care. He wasn't there for comfort. He was there for silence. And Ridgeway had plenty of it. The first thing Louis did was wire the building. He set up microphones in every hallway, behind broken mirrors, inside patient rooms, still lined with rusting bed frames. He ran cables through the crumbling stairwells and into the dark belly of the sub-basement. He brought night vision cameras too, though he never looked at the video footage. For Louis, sound was enough. He recorded the building 24 hours a day. Week 1, nothing. Just that heavy silence, the oppressive hum, the low vibration that never seemed to fade. Week 2, the silence deepened. He began waking up in the middle of the night, with nosebleeds. His ears rang when he walked the halls, like he was standing too close to invisible machinery. Week 3, the first sound arrived, a tapping, always the same sequence. 4 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause, 1 tap, pause, 2 taps. At first, Louis thought it was water, old pipes knocking in the walls, or the bones of the building shifting in the night, until he noticed something impossible. The tapping wasn't localized. It showed up on his recordings from multiple rooms at once. The second-floor hallway, the operating ward, the boiler room, even the pool, its tiled bottom cracked open like a dry mouth, all carrying the same rhythm. And there too, always in unison, always waiting for him to notice. Louis didn't panic. He became obsessed. He layered the audio files over one another, listening for distortions. He slowed them down, until the taps dragged out like the heartbeat of something massive and unseen. He isolated frequencies, filtering out the silence, until only the pattern remained. And then, Late one night, as the reels turned and the static hissed in his ears, Louis caught something new. The taps weren't random, they were words. He replayed the slowed track, heart pounding, and through the distortion, he heard it. I see you. He staggered back from the console. His chest tightened. Static, silence, and then the taps repeated, slowed, stretched. I am underneath. Louis stared at the waveform on the monitor, unable to breathe, and then came the third message, the one that froze in cold. I don't reflect. He sat there for hours, playing it back again and again, the same phrases, the same impossible sequence. I see you. I am underneath. I don't reflect. Louis stopped sleeping. He began cataloging each recording, marking the times, the runes, the frequencies. The more he listened, the more the taps changed. Sometimes the sequence grew faster, as if impatient, sometimes slower, like something breathing, and sometimes it didn't wait for the microphones. Sometimes Louis heard the taps with his own ears, in the walls, in the ceiling above his bed, inside his skull. The fourth week was worse. Louis noticed the pattern wasn't just in the sound, it began to appear in the building itself. 4 cracks in the plaster, 3 broken tiles, 1 window unshattered among a row of empties, 2 ceiling lights still faintly buzzing. 4. Lud. The pattern marked the walls like a signature, and then it followed him, out of Ridgeway, into his notebooks, his coffee cups, the dials on his recording machines. The sequence became inescapable. Louis wasn't just recording anymore. He was being recorded. One night, as the tape spun endlessly in the dark, Louis left his headset on the desk and stood in front of a mirror. The mirror was cracked, spotted, its silver backing corroded with age. He hadn't touched it since moving in, but now he couldn't resist. His reflection looked hollow, his skin pale from sleepless nights, his eyes sunken, lips cracked from dehydration, and behind him, faintly, he swore he saw movement, a shadow, leaning just out of frame. Louis turned. Nothing. When he looked back, the reflection was still except for the lips. They were moving, speaking words he couldn't hear, until the tape machine behind him clicked, rewound itself, and whispered into the air, I see you. The mirror fogged. Louis stumbled back, knocking over the chair. The reflection did not stumble. It stayed standing, and for the first time since arriving at Ridgeway, Louis understood the truth. The taps weren't sounds, they were doors, and one of them had just opened. Chapter 3. The room is not a room. Louis followed the sound, the tapping that had haunted him for weeks, always repeating, always insisting. It was no longer scattered across the building, no longer an echo from every corner. Now it pulled in one direction, like the steady rhythm of a heartbeat buried in stone. The sound led him to the east wing, the hydrotherapy ward, a long corridor lined with tile, most of it cracked and shedding, water-stained ceilings sagging under decades of neglect. Rust streaked the walls like dried blood. The air was heavy with mold, and something else, something sour and chemical, as though old disinfectants were still trying, and failing, to keep the rot away. At the end of the hall, Louis stopped. Where the blueprints showed a pool, there was only a wall, a solid barricade of bricks, uneven and mismatched, as if someone had sealed the space in haste. The tapping came from behind it. One, always the same. Louis stared at the bricks for a long time, before returning to his van. He came back with a hammer. The first strike echoed through the empty hospital like a gunshot. Dust plumed into the air, catching in his throat. He coughed, his chest tightening, but he swung again, and again, until the wall began to collapse inward, brick by brick, revealing the hollow space behind. At first, all Louis saw was darkness, a void where the pool should have been. But as the dust cleared, he saw something else. Not an opening, not a doorway, a door. It stood where the pool entrance should have been. But it wasn't wood, it wasn't metal. It was something else. A glossy black resin surface, smooth and unyielding. Its edges weren't framed. There were no hinges, no handle. It was as though the door had grown out of the wall itself, fused with the architecture, like a tumor. Louis ran his fingers over the surface. It was cool, too cool, almost wet, and the moment his skin touched it, the tapping stopped. For the first time since he arrived at Ridgeway, the silence returned. Not the usual silence of empty halls and dead air. This silence felt deeper, thicker. It was as though the building itself had been holding its breath. Louis pressed his ear to the door. Nothing. No sound at all. And then, without warning, the resin shifted. A seam appeared down the center. The door opened, not outward, not inward. It simply split, and slid into itself. revealing a black square beyond. Louis stepped through. What he found was impossible. A perfectly square room, 10 feet by 10 feet, smooth, black walls, seamless, and polished, reflecting faint traces of light, where no light source existed. There were no vents, no windows, no wiring. It was as though the room had not been built, but grown, and in the center of the far wall, was the only object inside, a mirror, bolted in place. Louis approached slowly, each footstep unnaturally loud in the emptiness. His breath fogged the air, even though the room was not cold. He stopped a few feet away, staring at his reflection. It was him, same tired eyes, same stubble, same worn clothes, but something felt wrong. The reflection was too slow. When he blinked, the man in the mirror blinked, a fraction of a second late. Louis leaned closer. His reflection leaned closer too. He lifted his hand. The reflection lifted its hand, but not quite in sync, always a beat behind. A delay, like it wasn't copying him, like it was thinking about it first. Louis whispered to himself, "This isn't a reflection, this is someone else." And then, on impulse he smiled. The reflection did not. It stared back with hollow eyes, lips frozen in a neutral line, and then, slowly, too slowly, it smiled on its own. A smile that didn't belong to him, a smile that spread wider than it should have, showing too many teeth, stretching too far across the face. Louis staggered back, heart pounding. The reflection's smile stayed, fixed, unnatural, and then it spoke. Its lips moved first, the sound followed a beat later, warped, distorted, as if dragged through static. "I see you." Louis froze. The same words he'd heard in the tapping, the same message, now given a face, his face. He backed toward the door, but the resin surface had already closed behind him, sealed. The square room held him. The mirror stared, and the reflection whispered again, lips peeling back in that impossible grin, "I am underneath." Louis pressed his palms against the black wall, breath ragged. There was no seam, no exit, just the mirror, watching him. And then came the third phrase, the one that had haunted him since the recordings. The reflection tilted its head. Its smile widened, cracking the skin at the corners of its mouth, and it whispered, "I don't reflect." Louis screamed. The sound didn't echo. The room swallowed it whole. Chapter 4. Inside the eye. Louis couldn't stay away. The black resin door in the hydrotherapy wing had become a magnet, pulling him back, night after night. He tried to fight it. He tried locking the hallway doors, even considered bricking it back up, but each time, his body betrayed him. His legs carried him down the tiled corridors, his hands pressed against the resin surface, until it split open for him, and each night, he stayed longer in front of the mirror. At first, he stood for minutes, then for hours. By the second week, he stopped returning to his makeshift studio, altogether. He began sleeping on the floor, just outside the black door, curled up in a sleeping bag, his notebooks scattered around him, pens running dry, in the dark. And every morning, when he read his own handwriting, he found words he didn't remember writing. He began to keep a journal. The entries grew more fragmented each day. "It doesn't copy me, it studies me. Sometimes I hear my own voice, speaking when my mouth is shut. The reflection is trying to learn how to leave." The last line was underlined 3 times. Louis tried to prove to himself he wasn't losing his mind. He set up a video camera inside the room. The mirror in frame, himself in frame, hours of footage. When he reviewed the recordings, he saw nothing unusual, just a man staring at his reflection. But every single tape shared one flaw. At exactly 3007 a.m. no matter what night, no matter what angle, the video glitched. For 1 second, the feed warped, the image bent, out of sync. It smiled, though Louis' own lips were still, and once, just once, he watched in horror, as the reflection leaned forward, pressing its palms against the glass, while Louis stood perfectly still. The next night, Louis brought 2 cameras, one facing the mirror, one facing him. Both tapes glitched. Alvin. A.M. Both tapes showed the same impossible thing. The man in the mirror moved first, and Louis lagged behind. By now, he had stopped eating, his cheeks hollowed, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights. He scribbled obsessively in his journal, lines growing more deranged. "It knows I am weak. It waits for the moment I forget which one of us is real. I don't think the reflection is trapped. I think I am." The words shook as he wrote them. Ink splattered across the page. One night, Louis decided to test it directly. He brought a flashlight into the room, stood before the mirror, and held the light steady in his hand. Then, with his other hand, He reached into his pocket and pulled out a second object, a small hammer. His reflection followed the end, delayed, but watching. Lewis raised the hammer. The reflection raised its own 9. Only there was nothing in its hand. The air thickened. Lewis's arm trembled as he brought the hammer down toward the glass. The reflection smiled, and the moment the hammer should have struck, the black resin wall behind him pulsed. The blow never landed. The mirror rippled like water, and Lewis swore just for a heartbeat. He saw something behind the reflection, not another room. Not himself, an eye. Massive, unblinking, filling the entire space beyond the glass, watching, waiting. Lewis dropped the hammer. It clanged against the floor, and echoed unnaturally, as if the sound were being stretched out, repeated again and again in a loop. The reflection leaned forward. Its lips moved, and though no sound came from Lewis's mouth, the room filled with his voice. "Don't turn it off." Lewis staggered backward. The reflection pressed its hands flat against the glass. It blinked slowly. Knees too slowly, then smiled again, and whispered, "Soon." Lewis fled the room that night, but he couldn't stay away. By morning he was back outside the resin door, curled up on the cold tile, journal open across his chest, pen still in hand. His last entry was written in cramped, frantic letters, scrawled so violently the paper tore through. "The eye is awake. The reflection is learning. It doesn't need me much longer." And beneath that, one final line, almost illegible. "Maybe I'm the reflection." Chapter 5. The tap code spreads 11. Lewis was unraveling. His notebooks filled faster than he could replace them. Margins crammed with numbers and symbols, fragments of words, sketches of the resin door, sketches of his own face. But wrong. Always wrong. The eyes too large, the mouth too wide, the smile crooked, as though he were remembering the reflection more than himself. The messages in the taps haunted him day and night. Yes. They whispered in the walls, in the floorboards, in his dreams. He could no longer tell whether the sound was external, or inside his skull. And so, desperate for proof, desperate for someone to tell him he wasn't insane, Lewis began sending things out. He mailed tapes to friends, carefully labeled reels with precise timestamps marked in his handwriting. "Listen at 03. Fen of the fert. They said and though. You calf." He begged them to listen, to really listen, to help him decode what the sound was trying to say. "It's not just a pattern," he wrote. "It's a signal. It wants to spread. I can't stop it alone." One of his friends, Eric, a casual acquaintance from an audio restoration forum, uploaded a snippet of the tape to Reddit. Just 30 seconds of audio, just the taps. 3, 1, 2. At first the comments were predictable. Sounds like pipes, glitchy recording, creepy but fake. But then the reports changed. Users began claiming they could still hear the tapping, even after closing the file. Some said their headphones thudded with phantom knocks hours after playback. Others claimed their mirrors flickered. A twitch, a shimmer at the corner of their vision, as though something was moving a half-second late. One user described a dream. A small black room, 10 feet by 10 feet, with a mirror bolted to the far wall. They swore they had never heard of Ridgeway, never heard of Lewis, yet they described the room perfectly. By morning the post was gone, deleted, so was the user. Their account erased, no trace. Another recipient was a professor of abnormal psychology at a small college in Vermont. He replied to Lewis with a terse clinical email. "What you've discovered is not sound in the traditional sense. It is a mental virus." Lewis read the words over and over, heart hammering. The professor continued. "The room is not a place, it is a thought, a shape, a key. It doesn't need to be seen to open, just heard." Lewis called him immediately. The professor's voice trembled as he explained. "You've stumbled into a mimetic structure, a piece of information that carries itself forward by embedding in the mind. It uses sound to travel, like a parasite, hitching a ride on language, on rhythm. The taps are an invitation. Once you internalize the pattern, the door opens inside you." Lewis asked what happened after the door opened. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally the professor whispered, "I don't think anyone comes back." That night, Lewis listened to his own recordings again. The taps were clearer now, sharper, like they knew he was paying attention. 4, pause, 3, pause, 1, pause, 2. His journal entry for that night read, "It doesn't want me to keep it secret. It wants me to share it. The room isn't inside Ridgeway anymore. It's inside us." Over the next week, more fragments of the audio began to surface online. Not just from Lewis' friends, but but from strangers. Someone had mirrored the Reddit file, another had ripped the taps and looped them into a TikTok sound. Comments spread across forums, message boards, Discord servers. Can't sleep, I keep hearing it. Bathroom mirror twitched tonight, swear it smiled. Dreamt of a black room. Woke up with my hand against the wall like I was feeling for a scene. And always the pattern. 4, pause, 3 pause, 1 pause, 2. Lewis tried to warn them. He flooded message threads with frantic replies, begged people to delete the files, begged them to stop listening. But curiosity is contagious. The more he tried to bury it, the faster it spread, and soon he noticed something new. The taps weren't confined to the building anymore. He heard them when he left Ridgeway, on the side of the highway, under the hum of his van's engine, in the motel rooms, where he tried to sleep. In the quiet moments between his own thoughts, the signal was free now. The code had slipped its chains, and wherever it traveled, mirrors began to twitch. One final email arrived from the professor, time-stamped 0307 AM. No greeting, no sign-off, just a single line. It doesn't reflect because it's not behind the glass anymore. After that, the professor stopped responding. His inbox auto-replied, account not found. Lewis stared at the message. The glow of his monitor reflected faintly in the dark window above his desk, and for the first time he wondered if the reflection was watching him from the other side of the screen. That night, he dreamed. A black room, 10 feet by 10 feet, smooth walls, and a mirror bolted to the far side. When he walked closer, his reflection was waiting, smiling, leaning forward, tapping on the glass. 4, pause, 3, pause, 1, pause, 2. Chapter 6. The reflection moves first. A Lewis final tape is corrupted. Badly. The reel sputters, warps, and snarls in a mess of static, like something inside the machine didn't want to be played back. But pieces remain, enough to piece together a timeline. Fragments of his last days. Tape fragment, Nastus 39. His voice is hoarse, weary, like he hasn't slept in weeks. I've tried breaking the mirror. It's not glass. I thought it was resin, but it's not that either. It doesn't even scratch. The hammer bent, the chisel snapped, a sound follows, metal clattering on concrete. Lewis breathing heavily, muttering under his breath. It laughed. I swear to God, it laughed when the hammer broke. The tape ends with a distortion, a screeching tone that shouldn't exist on analog. Journal entry, scrawled across 3 pages. I've seen it now, the other side. It's not empty, it's waiting. I thought it was a reflection, but the room doesn't match mine. The cracks on the wall behind me, they aren't there. The lights flicker at different times. Sometimes there's no ceiling. Sometimes it looks like the floor is made of water. He underlined the next sentence 5 times. It knows I'm watching. Tape. Fragment, day. 42. Lewis' breathing is shallow, panicked. It blinked before I did. Do you understand what that means? It's learning. It's rehearsing, like a bad actor that keeps getting better with each take. Tonight, it breathed before I inhaled. I heard it, like lungs pressing against the glass. There's a scraping sound, fingernails against something solid. Lewis' voice rises to a whisper. It's not a reflection, it's a recording of me, a living recording, trying to escape me. Static, then a long silence, then the faintest whisper. Not Lewis' voice, almost ready. Journal entry, final pages. The handwriting is frantic, the ink smudged, as if written while trembling. I don't know how much longer I can keep ahead of it. Every time I enter the room, the delay shortens, first half a second, then a blink. Now, nothing. It moves when I don't. Sometimes, I leave the room, but when I look in a window or a dark surface, I see it still in there, smiling, patient. He scribbles an arrow, pointing to a final line. It's getting better, and I'm getting worse. The last known footage of Lewis was recorded on a tripod camera. He set up outside the resin door. Timestamp 0307 AM. The video shows him standing in the doorway, trembling, clutching a lantern. His eyes are hollow, his face gaunt. He looks at the mirror one last time. Then, without hesitation, he steps inside. The door swings shut behind him. The footage continues. Minutes pass. Nothing. But then, at 0314 AM, the camera glitches. Just once, a blink of static. When the picture returns, Lewis is gone. The room is empty. Empty, except for his reflection. It stands there, in perfect clarity, alone in the black square of the room, breathing, smiling, waiting. The tape cuts there, but archivists who examined the corrupted reel later claimed that if you slowed the final frame enough, frame by frame, pixel by pixel, you could see something else. Not Lewis, not the mirror, but a faint outline. A figure, half-formed, standing behind the camera, watching, recording. Chapter 7. The Room Finds UAs. In 2022, hikers in the Catskills reported strange compass behavior. All needles, every single one, pointing in the same direction. North, south, east, west. It didn't matter. They all spun, then froze, their needles locked toward a patch of unmarked forest. The hikers followed. What they found was not on any trail map, not even on GPS. A clearing, seas silent, empty, air heavy, with static pressure, and in the center of that clearing, a mirror, tall, cracked down the middle. Its frame was gone, edges raw and sharp, as if the ground itself had pushed it upward, like a shard of bone, breaking through skin. The mirror faced the sky, tilted at an unnatural angle, reflecting only clouds and treetops. No one could explain how it got there. One hiker, Miraz, young, early 20s, obsessed with documenting everything, pulled out his phone. He laughed nervously, called it the weirdest geocache in history, and he did what everyone does now, without thinking. He turned the camera on himself, a selfie. The photo uploaded to his account seconds later. But when he looked at it, his smile faded, because in the image, there weren't one but two versions of him, both standing side by side, one smiling, as he had been in real life, the other, blank, expressionless, its eyes slightly too dark, its head tilted just a fraction too late. He captioned the photo, "Glitch in the Matrix, found this mirror in the woods. Why do I look doubled? FOS." The post racked up likes in minutes, comments flooded in Milos, some joking, some unnerved, but then, just as quickly, it vanished. Deleted, his account suspended, every trace of his profile scrubbed, and the hiker himself, he hasn't been seen since. His friends say he never came home from that trip. Police combed the clearing, but found nothing. No mirror, no disturbed soil, no trace he had ever stood there. Just trees, just silence. Stories began to circulate. Some say Ridgeway was never a hospital. Not really, not for patients, not for doctors. It was a structure built around something older, a wound in the world, a tear in reality that needed walls to contain it. The psychiatric hospital was just a disguise, a cage, and the room was never meant to heal. It was meant to trap, but the trap failed. The tapping got out, and now, the room doesn't wait for you to come to Ridgeway. It doesn't need you to step into the black square, because the room can find you, in any mirror, bathroom glass, car window, darkened phone screen, even the reflection in someone else's eye. If you know the pattern, if you hear it long enough, the room is already waiting behind the glass. 4. Pause. 3. Pause. 1. Pause. 2. That's all it takes. 4 taps. 3. 1. 2. Like a door knock. From nowhere. Like a key turning in a lock you didn't know you had. There are instructions, whispered across old forums and late-night threads. Survivors, if you can call them that.
Passing warnings to strangers they'll never meet.
If you hear the taps tonight, don't follow them. Don't lean toward the sound. Don't search for the source. Close your eyes. Say your name backwards, wait for silence, and pray it leaves you alone. Because if you hesitate, if you let curiosity get the better of you, you might open your eyes at the wrong moment. You might see your reflection smiling before you do, or breathing before you inhale, or blinking before you even think to blink. And if that happens, it's already too late, because it's learning, it's rehearsing, and the moment it moves first, the moment it gets better at being you than you are, you'll never know if the person walking away from the mirror is really you, or the thing that's been waiting all along. You've looked in long enough, and if your reflection still matches, if the eyes staring back at you blinked when you blinked, if the lips curved at the exact moment you smiled, then consider yourself lucky. You survived tonight, but survival is never guaranteed twice, because tomorrow's story, tomorrow's room, tomorrow's reflection, it might not let you leave. When you close this video, remember something. Mirrors don't shut off when you walk away. They remember you. They wait. They keep a version of you pressed against the glass, patient, motionless, rehearsing, and the longer you look, the more it learns, every blink, every breath, every hesitation, until, one night, you don't recognize which side of the glass you're really on. So, if you're listening right now in the dark, don't check the mirror, not the bathroom one, not the black surface of your phone, not the faint reflection in the window, because if it smiles first, you won't sleep, and if it moves first, you won't wake. Welcome to Screams of the Mind. Subscribe now. You'll need a place to come back to when the reflection changes, or stay here. Listen again. The room likes echoes. 4. Pause. 3. Pause. 1. Pause. 2.